So what I mean is,
keep Zelensky alive.
okay, you know, this
From establishing a
is
sky
the
bridge
housing
into
for the
Kyiv,
electronics for this
render the Russian Air Force
device.
ineffective, repel the initial
Just wait.
attack on the capital, and make the convoy regret ever having crossed the Belarusian border. Of these, keeping Zelensky alive and in the country was
Goddamn
the easiest,
hackers, dude.
and the in the country part was a gimme. All Zelensky had to do was reach the plane,
You see these
train, or
browsers? They
automobile
hacked me
that
and
the
made
West
it
was
so
offering.
browsers on them. They keep
Nevertheless,
trying to
they
stop
took a
me.
calculated gamble. The rest of Ukraine's plan was far from a guaranteed success.
This is my
and should Ukraine,
code,
it
the
would grow
tool.
increasingly difficult
Make it like a
for
little
Zelensky
workshop
to flee.
robot.
That would jeopardize continuity of government and facilitate the appointment of a Russian proxy to the presidency. As Zelensky awoke in the middle of the night to the invasion underway, his initial task was to meet with defense ministers to address where he should go. They reached a consensus. Zelensky would stay in Kyiv. Doing so would raise Ukraine's rally round the flag effect and convince others to stay and fight.
These,
the higher chances of success justify the higher risks.
Nanobot concepts.
However, keeping Zelensky
this
alive
stuff
required more strategy.
And
even if Ukraine could militarily win the Battle of Kyiv,
this
still
stuff.
had to worry about assassination
So a mini
attempts
UFO concept.
sky.
A omniscience for third dimension, a omniscience for second dimension, channeling time channels, and then a type of little bacteriophage-like robot in a larger cell that it would inhabit, that cools it down to store viruses or other things, and inject into that to make it. It's a concept. But then this for hydrolysis in little bones, like for organules, coolant, and then a little heat, thermal heating, to try to burn and thermally heat out the viruses or other diseases or whatever. With this, that brings it to them, to the docking area, the little robot arms that it has. And then these concepts
sabotaged that plan decades earlier. Much of Kyiv's infrastructure is a byproduct of Cold War planning. Across the country, subway tunnels that are normally meant for trains were built deeper underground to double as nuclear fallout shelters. During the initial stages of the invasion, civilians jammed inside them for safety. But
what if you have this?
Had an even better option. A large bunker system under Kyiv, specifically designed to keep the government functioning from below. Those who have been in the bunker tunnels describe them as so vast and disorienting that even if you knew where Zelensky was within them,
you have bacteriophages and you equip them with gear and stuff,
when it was safe, Zelensky would pop out every
and
now
some
and
other
then
like rail systems and other types of little nanobot systems, right?
And just like
and
that,
train them to inject good genes or positive modifiers to our genetics or to the membranes and cells by attaching a little circular brain membrane above it, the organelle on the top of it.
On the ground might not seem like much to drive, but even under good conditions, simply flying everything directly to the combat zone makes life
and store the genes inside of it with the coolant on both sides, and the future update gene that you want it to try to transcribe or something.
38-kilometer drive from the capital's center. You might remember it as the home of the
and then I have
AN-225,
open
the world's largest plane before it got destroyed
nanobot
in the
improver. This attaches to it, and it has a slicer to program into my Hallett 1, but to update files into it.
Were ideal for landing heavy military equipment. Burns had also
with the
warned
Arduino,
Zelensky about the importance
and
of the
this
airport.
is just
Ukraine was prepared to respond.
concepts of
Ukraine parked long vehicles perpendicular to the runway, including this, likely a snowplow. Doing so prevented Russia from simply landing planes until soldiers had arrived.
But what I was saying is, if you did that, bacteriophages,
Russia airdropped soldiers around the airport within a few hours of the invasion. They would quickly take control of the facility. However, Ukrainians were waiting in reserve for a counterattack. and Russia had to
as,
retreat to
let's
the surrounding
say,
woods for the night. The next day, Russian reinforcements arrived on the ground and overwhelmed Ukrainian defenders. The airport exchanged hands once again, and Russia began
a
clearing
Dyson
the obstacles.
sphere.
Nevertheless, in the interim, Ukraine hit the runway with enough bombs
A
and
nano
artillery to render
Dyson
it
sphere
inoperable.
underground.
Russia would later repair the runway and begin receiving
Right?
planes,
With
but not
dimensional
quickly enough to have it
expansionism.
make an impact on the outcome of the overall offensive. Ukraine was 2 for 2 with its goals thus far. The third task was to stop the Russian Air Force more generally.
And the
Ukraine
3
succeeded
pi
here due to a
calculates for the
combination of
scale
Russian rigidity,
in time
Ukrainian foresight,
with
and
the
a little
3
help
separate
from some
time
friends.
calculations
In the months prior
for
to the war,
antimatter,
Ukraine dispersed
matter,
its anti-aircraft
and
systems
neutral.
as a preliminary step toward creating a more
And you try to
robust
use that
defense
with
network,
an
fully aware
ion
that Russia would
chamber,
want to target them
with
to
an
clear
ion
the
chamber,
planes.
right?
In the days before
The negative
actual
ions in
invasion,
time, and then
Ukraine
the
further
torsion to
reshuffled many
affect
of its
the
systems,
torsion at a
and
certain
they kept
frequency or